Hey everybody. So it wasn't that long ago that I posted a video to the channel talking about some of the differences between Windows 10 and Windows 11 and which you should install on your system. But I felt that it was much overdue to create a more in-depth side-by-side comparison between Windows 10 and Windows 11. So here we are. I'm doing this video very similar to the way that I did a video back many years ago comparing Windows 8 and Windows 8.1. We have both Windows 10 and Windows 11 in virtual machines. Windows 10 is on the left, Windows 11 is on the right. Let's go ahead and pull up the specs on each of these. So on the left we have Windows 10 Pro 22H2 OS build 19045.2006. It's a 32-bit installation and it has, I think, 2 gigabytes of memory. Yes, 2 gigs of RAM available. Our system on the right is Windows 11 Pro 22H2 OS build number 22621.2428. And I should note that this Windows 11 installation does in fact have the recent updates that were released in late September of 2023 that provided some new functionality which we'll be covering in this video. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start out by just looking at the desktops of both of these. So the desktop backgrounds on these are both the default desktop backgrounds. Windows 10 of course has the light blue background with the Windows logo in it, appearing as light shining through a window. Now of course older builds on Windows 10 had a more or less denim colored blue background with the same Windows 10 logo in it with light shining through like a window. On the right we have Windows 11's default desktop wallpaper, and not real sure what to call this. Is it like a digital rendering of a flower? I mean, I don't know. There are several different versions of this. There's one for dark mode where the colors are kind of reversed. I mean, you do still have this same color blue here. Here's what I was talking about. This is the desktop background on the host computer's operating system, Windows 11, on the mid-tower Lux. So when you look at the taskbars on both of these versions of Windows, you can see how Windows 10 has more of a flat and squared off interface, which will be more apparent in, of course, when you open up a window. So we'll open up Task Manager, for example, on both of these. And Task Manager is something we'll have to compare because there are some differences here. So you can see how the corners are squared off on Windows 10, whereas on Windows 11 they're more rounded off. And you may be able to see that they both have sort of a shadow effect behind the windows. However, it's more apparent in Windows 11. More or less, Windows 11 is kind of repeating what Windows Vista did years ago. It's bringing back a whole lot of eye candy. We'll just say that's bringing a whole lot of eye candy back to the Windows interface. Some people like it, other people don't much like it. For example, if you look at the taskbars on these, you'll see how, of course, on Windows 10 you have the start button. Let me minimize these for a sec. And of course the start button opens up the start menu, and there's a look at the start menus on each of these. So we'll cover the start menus in a moment. So Windows 10, you of course had the start button, the search bar. You have Cortana, which she's still alive and well in Windows 10, even though Microsoft has basically ended her in Windows 11. We have Task View, which is of course what you click to add a new desktop. And then you have your pinned applications right here, and as well as open applications. And toward the right in Windows 10 you have, of course, news and interests, whereas in Windows 11 it's on the far left where the start button will normally be. And when you open it up in Windows 11, you are given widgets as well as news and interests. You can see the interface for that takes a bit more screen space. And of course right here we have our system tray icons. Windows 10 has a Meet Now option, whereas in Windows 11 it's Chat, which is of course right there. You have your network settings here, volume control there, date and time here, as well as notifications right here, and the Show Desktop button. In Windows 11, we have, of course, our tray icons here, which are all hidden. Similar deal in Windows 10. Here we have, of course, our network connection as well as volume control, which is one button here. When you click it, you get of course your volume control as well as network settings, airplane mode, night light, accessibility, nearby sharing. And of course, since this virtual machine has an Ethernet connection, instead of having Wi-Fi here, it's Bluetooth. And of course, we have the date and time here as well as notifications. And to the right of that, we have the Show Desktop button. So, one big difference between Windows 10 and Windows 11 is how the operating system behaves when you click on the clock. You can see how on Windows 10, when you click on the clock, you get your calendar as well as a full clock with minutes, hours, and seconds. Whereas in Windows 11, you have notifications here, which we have no notifications right now. And we have the date, and you have focus settings here. Now, if you click this up arrow, you'll get a calendar, but you don't get a full running clock like you do in Windows 10. Now, in Windows 11, you may or may not have the option in taskbar settings to turn on the Show Seconds as System Tray. So if you click this, we now have a running clock. However, this does use a little more resources. Honestly, I would prefer that it would just be like Windows 10, where, for example, when you click on the clock, you get the calendar, and you see we have notifications, but it would have also been nice to have the full clock, let's say, right next to the date here, or right above it like it is in Windows 10. Like, how hard would that have been? Let's go and talk about another feature that Microsoft removed from Windows 11 that was in Windows 10. One thing that's in Windows 10 is the ability to unlock the taskbar and move it around to the left, or to the right, or to the top. I mean, I think this is pretty cool. Now, I've always had the taskbar on the bottom of the screen, but let's say for somebody who is used to having it, let's say on the left, or on the right, or on the top, and they upgrade to Windows 11. Well, they'll be disappointed to find out that you cannot move the taskbar around in Windows 11. And speaking of the taskbar, you may notice already that when you right-click on the taskbar in Windows 10, for example, you get all these different options here. Tons of options right there. When you right-click on the taskbar, they're right there. Whereas in Windows 11, you right-click, oh, you get taskbar settings and task manager. Now, it used to be, when Windows 11 first came out, task manager wasn't even there. And that was very annoying. You had to press Control delete to get the task manager, or you had to click Start and search for it. So they did at least restore that, but to get to taskbar settings on Windows 11, you got right click and choose taskbar settings. So, I mean, I think this was honestly, I think this was much better. It was nice to be able to just right click on the taskbar and get your taskbar settings right there without having to open the settings app just to access those things. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at the start menus between these two. Of course, in Windows 10, it opens up on the far left like it has, of course, since Windows 95, with the exception of Windows 8.0. In Windows 11, you can see how it opens up in the center. Now, if you're wondering, yes, you can left align these icons. And of course, as you may have seen earlier when I briefly showed you the taskbar on the Mid-Tower Deluxe, you may have seen how the icons were left aligned. So if you want to left align your taskbar on Windows 11 like it is in Windows 10, all you have to do is just right click on the taskbar, choose taskbar settings, scroll down to taskbar behaviors, and then you have taskbar alignment right here. So you can either have it center or left aligned. when you align it to the left, you can see it looks like Windows 10. The start menu, for example, opens up on the left like this, and now the widgets and the news and interests shows up as a the equivalent of a pinned app in a way. So it's still there, it's just in a slightly different spot. So you can left align this stuff. And of course, what we're looking at right now is the default start menu appearance on both of these operating systems. Of course, Windows 10, the start menu, of course, has your username as well as documents, pictures, settings, and power. Now you can actually add more options into these on both of these, and we'll demonstrate that in Windows 11 here in a little bit. In Windows 10, all apps is already displayed. You don't have to click anything to see all apps. It's already right there, and it's in alphabetical order. And to the right of that, you have your live tiles, which live tiles is something that was introduced in Windows 8. And let's just say that the live tiles, some people like them, others don't much like them. I've never much cared for them. I'm glad Microsoft is getting rid of them. As you can see here in Windows 11, we don't have any live tiles. We have pinned apps, and at the bottom we have recommended apps or files. So this is based off of your usage history here. And on Windows 10, generally when you install new apps, they will appear at the top of this list as recently added, but we don't have any currently right now. And of course the pinned apps, this is the default list of pinned apps that you have. And one thing that's in common about both these operating systems that I don't like is, of course, how they download and install so many apps that you may never use. Like, for example, we have WhatsApp, Spotify, Instagram, among others on Windows 10. And if we go to all apps in Windows 11, I'm pretty sure we will see something sort of similar. And actually, I'm not seeing nearly as much of it on Windows 11 as I am on Windows 10. But I do see apps randomly get downloaded and installed on Windows 11 from time to time as well. But it seems like it's even more apparent in Windows 10 than it is in Windows 11. Now, I should note, in Windows 10, let's say if you don't want the live tiles, you can get rid of them. All you have to do is just right-click and unpin the groups from Start. And now we have just a bare start menu. We have just the list of apps, and we have our username, documents, pictures, settings, and all that good stuff. Now, for example, I guess I will in fact go into settings here and see if we can personalize this start menu a little more. See, the thing is, I personally do not use the regular start menu in Windows 10 or Windows 11. I actually use OpenShell, which gives me back the Windows 7 start menu. I feel like the Windows 7 start menu is far superior than any kind of start menu that Microsoft has come up with since Windows 7. Of course, the start screen in Windows 8 was a total disaster. Windows 10 was somewhat better, and Windows 11, it's alright. I have personally tried to use them, but I've never liked them and ended up going back to the Windows 7 style menu. So as you can see, Windows 10 is not even letting us personalize the start menu because it's not activated. Yet on Windows 11, you can customize the start menu without having to activate Windows. So for example, we'll go into the settings for Windows 11 and we will add the whole list of things you can have on the bottom of the start menu. So we go to personalization and we go to start. There's several different things you can do to the start menu in Windows 11. For one thing, you can adjust how it displays pins and recommendations. Now, of course, by default is more of a 60-40, I'll say. You can have it do more pins. Let's say if you don't want recommendations, you can have it mostly do pin stuff and a couple recommendations. Or you can have it do more recommendations and less pin stuff. So you can see right there. But the thing about Windows 11 start menu is, let's say for example you go into privacy settings and you turn off the more or less the history. it no longer will show recommended stuff in the start menu, but instead you have a big old blank space in the start menu. It would be nice if you could actually completely turn off recommendations and have it just pins. But you can see all they have is either more pins, default, or more recommendations. So it is what it is. Now, as I was saying earlier, you can add tons of different things to the Windows 11 Start menu. For example, we'll turn these all on. Settings, File Explorer, Documents, Downloads, Music, Pictures, Videos, Network, and Personal Folder. So now when you click on Start, you have all these different options at the bottom of the Start menu. Trust me, I've experimented with this thing, and I still prefer the Windows 7 menu. That's just me. But of course, Windows 11 does give you quite a few options to customize the Start menu, even if you don't have the OS activated. So that's definitely a win over Windows 10. Now let's take a moment to compare task managers between Windows 10 and Windows 11. So Windows 11 22H2 introduced a new task manager. Windows 11 21H2 carried over the existing Windows 10 task manager, which has been around since Windows 8. So in Windows 10, the task manager is pretty much identical to the one that was released with Windows 8. It was definitely a huge improvement over the Windows 7 task manager, and I mean, I do like it. I mean, it's pretty nice, it's useful, but Windows 11's task manager, you can see, it's very similar. Instead of having the tabs up here, your processes, performance, app history, startup, users, details, and services all on the left here, and if you click this button here, oh, a little bit of delay there. Now you can see all these different options, and then of course there are settings for Task Manager, so you can go in and customize Task Manager even further, which I think is pretty neat. So Windows 10, of course, you have file options and all that good stuff. Whereas Windows 11, you have a whole settings menu within Task Manager, which is pretty cool. Windows 11 Task Manager also has a search bar at the top. And other than that, they're very similar, except of course Windows 11, with its redesigns, they've redesigned everything to have a little bit different look. Things are in slightly different places and stuff like that. Okay, let's take a moment to compare settings between Windows 10 and Windows 11. So we'll open settings in Windows 10, and we'll open it in Windows 11. So in Windows 10, the settings menu is kind of bare and basic. It more or less follows the Windows 10 design, where it's really squared off and just kind of, well, simple, I guess. But there are some features in the new Windows 11 settings menu that do give you more functionality and make things easier to do, but not everything is easier to do in Windows 11 settings, and we'll get on to that in just a moment. So in Windows 10, you of course have your account name up top, and the account information here, and of course if it was a Microsoft account, your email address will be shown right there. So you can see how it's saying give you more out of Windows. Now sometimes it will give you options for Windows Update and rewards and your web browsing. So we'll skip for now, and okay, there they are. So Windows Update's there, rewards, sign in with the Microsoft account to access that. Now web browsing, this is one thing that's just irritated me since Microsoft pulled this stunt when they introduced this top bar to the Windows 10 settings menu. So you can see right now it says web browsing, recommended settings. You know what recommended settings is, right? When it's all Microsoft. Yep, when it's Microsoft Edge for your browser. So for example, if we were to set Chrome as a default browser, you'll see this will change, and we'll come back to that in a moment. So you can see in Windows 10's settings menu all your various options. They take on sort of a tile look instead of being on the far left like they are in Windows 11. They're kind of displayed across the entire menu. Let's say, for example, if we go to apps, you can see how now your sub options for apps are on the left, such as apps and features, default apps, all the good stuff. Whereas, of course, in Windows 11, you may notice things are a bit different. So instead of having this bare and basic home screen with the search bar at the top, Windows 11 takes things to another level. And of course, this build of Windows 11 has the recently released feature previews. So you can see how now, in addition to having all of the options on the left, we now have a home menu that pops up when you open settings in Windows 11. This new home menu gives you quick access to a lot of commonly used settings. We're going to expand this a little bit more to make it just a tad bigger. There we are. So you have a lot of common settings here, like your network connectivity, Windows Update, and the ability to rename your computer without having to go into anything else. You just open settings and it's right there. For example, if I want to rename this computer, just click rename and rename it. Whereas in Windows 10, you got to go to System, and you got to go to About, and then you got to click on rename this PC. So it's 2 extra clicks you got to do on Windows 10 to accomplish the same thing on Windows 11. You may notice how, for example, if I go into, let's say, System in Windows 11, this is how Windows 11's settings used to be prior to this recent update. When you open Windows 11, you would get the System as your default opening menu. So now with the home thing, it's more like Windows 10 in a way. But one thing you might notice is you can see how, for example, if I go home in Windows 10 and we click on System, you can see how your main options disappear. Like they're seeing Windows 11, your main options are still right there on the left, whereas on Windows 10, your sub options for what you just clicked on are right here on the left. So if you want to go to, let's say, personalization in Windows 10, you got to go back and then go to personalization, whereas on Windows 11, you just click on personalization without, and you don't have to go back. So pretty nice. And when you click back, it takes you right back to where you were. So Windows 11 settings, you do have quicker access to a lot of different things. Everything is laid out better with the exception of some things, which we'll cover here in a minute. So one thing about settings, though, in Windows 11 that I really despise, I hate it, and I'm sure you probably hate this too, and it feels like Microsoft just did this on purpose. So in Windows 10, let's say if you want to set a default application, let's say if you want to set a default video player or a default web browser, you just go to settings, you go to apps, you go to default apps. Windows 10 has this really nice default apps menu. You can easily set defaults for commonly used things like a music player, a photo viewer, a video player, or a web browser. So, for example, let's say if I want to set a different music player than what's currently set as default. So we just click on it, and then we can choose something else. Simple as that. Whereas in Windows 11, let's say Media Player is currently my default app. We have to go to, of course, Apps. Then we go to Default Apps. And you can see you have the option to set defaults for applications. Okay, let's look up Windows Media Player. It helps if I spell right. So Windows Media Player Legacy, which, by the way, is the same exact thing as Windows Media Player and Windows 10. You have to go through and change it by file type for all these different files. This is just ridiculous. Like, why did Microsoft go to the trouble to screw this up? Whereas in Windows 10, you had a quick and easy way to set defaults. Now, granted, in Windows 11, let's say I install a new video player. When I go to open video files, Windows 11 will prompt if you want to continue using the currently set default or if you want to change it to something else. And if you change it to something else, you can click either always or just once. It's kind of like a phone in a way, kind of like my Android phone. But this is just ridiculous. And to be honest, when Windows 11 first came out, there was a huge, huge outcry over this, particularly with setting your default browser. I mean, it's almost like Microsoft has done this on purpose to try to prevent you from changing defaults from Microsoft apps, like Microsoft Edge or Media Player or Photos, things like that. They don't want you to use your apps, they want you to use their apps. Who owns the PC? Do you own the computer, or does Microsoft own the computer? Sometimes I think Microsoft thinks they own it because of the way for a number of different reasons, and that's kind of out of the subject of this video. But yeah, this kind of applies to both Windows 10 and Windows 11 in a way, and of course we'll see more examples of that as we go on. So, as I mentioned, there was a huge amount of backlash over Microsoft doing this. And for example, setting your default web browser used to be you had to go in and select your browser, and then you'd have to go change all these different all these different extensions. This sort of set it as your default browser, but Microsoft did release a hot fix to where you can simply click set default. It's like, okay, why can't they do this for everything? Like if you search an app and you select it, there should be a set default option for any app you search and select, because you're here to set an app as a default app, right? Okay, why can't they make it to where you can just click set default on anything? They did it in Windows 10 in a way. Again, this is just so much easier. And of course, in Windows 10, to set your default browser, you just click here and you select Chrome and you dismiss the dumb question about Microsoft Edge, and that's it. Now, what I was talking about earlier about that top bar in settings on Windows 10, you can see how now it says web browsing, restore recommended. And if you highlight across it, it says use Microsoft recommended browser settings. If you click it, and you say confirm, it says set the latest Microsoft Edge as your default browser and pin it to your desktop and taskbar. It's the best browser for Windows 10 with enhanced privacy protection. This is just ridiculous. This is so freaking ridiculous. Microsoft, I feel like they are on the road to another antitrust lawsuit for some of the things that they've been doing in both Windows 10 and Windows 11. But aside from the lack of ease of being able to set default applications in Windows 11, the settings menu in Windows 11 is a whole lot nicer than what you get in Windows 10, in my opinion. Just if they would set it to where you can easily change and set default applications. Okay, let's take a moment to look at File Explorer in Windows 10 and Windows 11. So I should note on this Windows 11, we have, of course, the new File Explorer that was part of the September updates that enable these new features. These are features that will be coming to Windows 11 23H2. However, Microsoft decided to enable them a little earlier, since Windows 11 23H2 will simply be an enablement package that will essentially turn your Windows 11 22H2 into 23H2. So if we take a moment and go back to the Mid-Tower Lux here, we can have a look at the File Explorer here. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because Mid-Tower Lux currently has not yet installed the September 2023 update previews. So this is what the original Windows 11 File Explorer looks like, and if you compare it to Windows 10, they are similar. But File Explorer Windows 11, of course, you have this new toolbar here that has a lot of common options here. For example, cut, copy, paste, rename, I think that's share and delete and all that good stuff. And you now have tabs in File Explorer, whereas in Windows 10 you did not. Now, of course, going back to the newer File Explorer, you can see they have changed some things around a little bit. The address bar looks a little different. The search looks a tad bit different. Now, one thing, for example, if we go to, let's see, we look at folders and files in each of these. Now, I should note that this is not my first video take of this comparison, so I'm going to have to set some things back to default. But in Windows 11, the default view of file details, or in a detailed view, is all spread out, and you can see everything here is all spread out. seriously, I don't understand the whole concept of spreading everything out. It's just wasting screen space. But the good news is, at least in File Explorer, you can turn that off by going to View, Show, and then of course clicking Compact View. And I should note that in the previous File Explorer of Windows 11, you go to View, and then there's Compact View. And of course, you can see on Windows 10, the File Explorer, I think it's really similar to the one that's in Windows 8. You have the sort of ribbon interface that was part of Microsoft Office, and probably I think still is part of Microsoft Office. You can see how they incorporated that into the File Explorer in Windows 8, and that was carried over into Windows 10. So Windows 10, the File Explorer is similar to the one that's in Windows 11, but of course Windows 11 has the tabs, and of course with the the September 2023 updates, it now has a slightly new look. Okay, let's go and take some time to look at some of the bundled apps that you have in Windows 10 and Windows 11. First, let's start out with one that has received some pretty big changes, including the new changes that were released as part of the September 2023 updates. And that is Snipping tool. So in Windows 10, you actually have two different snipping tools. You have the classic snipping tool that's been around since Windows Vista, and of course you have Snip and Sketch. So I'm going to bring both of these up because I think it is pretty important to compare them with Windows 11. So in Windows 11, of course, we now have Snipping tool. You can see how search works in both of these. When you click on Start and you start typing, it begins searching. So what Microsoft did is they incorporated both Snipping tool and Snip and Sketch into a new snipping tool. So back in Windows 10, you would see this pop-up or this little advisory in Snipping tool saying that Snipping tool is moving. It says in a future update, Snipping tool will be moving to a new home. Try improved features in Snip like usual as Snip and Sketch. So Microsoft, I think, was originally planning on getting rid of Snipping tool and just doing Snip and Sketch, but they kind of backtracked and instead decided to incorporate the features of Snip and Sketch into Snipping tool. So what's nice about the Snipping tool in Windows 11 is, so for example, let's do a screenshot here. So there are two things that just happened. Number one, it copied this screenshot to the clipboard. And number two, it saved the copy to your pictures. So if we go into pictures, and we go to screenshots, you can see right there, here we are, and there's some other ones I've taken in previous text of this video. So by default, it saves a copy to your computer as well as it makes a copy to your clipboard. Now you can turn these features off, and we'll cover that in a moment. So in Snip and Sketch, we'll actually first we'll do Snipping tool. So Snipping tool, this is the same Snipping tool that's been around since Windows Vista. You do your screenshot, and it pops up here in Snipping tool. Those two things I mentioned that happened in Windows 11 by default have not happened here. It's literally just showing here in Snipping tool. So if you want to make a copy, you actually have to click on copy. And if you want to save it, then you have to actually click on save, and then you can specify a file name, all that good stuff. It's pretty familiar. It's been around for quite some time. So we'll close this out, and we'll now try Snip and Sketch. So if you see, Snip and Sketch looks very similar to Snipping tool in Windows 11. And you can see it looks even more familiar here. So you can see the similarities between Snip and Sketch and Snipping tool between Windows 10 and Windows 11. But Snipping tool in Windows 11 builds upon Snip and Sketch and adds a lot of new features. So for example, we're going to bring Snipping tool back up in Windows 10. Yeah, of course, that way you can see them side by side. Now if we go to options here, so you don't have a whole lot there. I mean, A lot of these are already enabled, so that's about it you get for the classic snipping tool. Now in Windows 10 and Windows 11, of course the Snip and Sketch in Windows 10, which is the newer, more modern snipping tool in Windows 10. If we go to settings on each of these, you can see how they are very similar. Now of course the settings in snipping tool in Windows 11 takes on the newer Windows 11 style looks. So we look here at Snip and Sketch settings. By default, it can auto copy to the clipboard, but I don't see an option to automatically save. So let's say in Windows 11 you don't want it to automatically save your screenshots, because let's face it, not every screenshot is perfect. And I have found that when you have this enabled, your screenshots folder will become a big mess really quickly. You'll have a lot of screenshots you don't really want it to go in and delete them, otherwise you just have a big mess. So, like me, you can turn this off. It's nice to automatically copy changes, but you don't need to save them every time. And let's say if you want this to function more like the classic snipping tool in Windows 10, you can just have it not automatically copy changes as a clipboard. So when you bring up snipping tool, you make your screenshot. For example, we'll do it again. This time it did not save a copy to the computer, and it did not copy to the clipboard. Now another thing I should note in Windows 11, let's go back to settings here and let's go ahead and have it automatically copy changes and automatically save screenshots. By default in Windows 11, to take a screenshot, you don't even have to open snipping tool. You can just press print screen, and by default, snipping tool or the snip and sketch functionality pops up, and you can make your screenshot like this, and you'll get a notification stating that the screenshot was copied to the clipboard and saved. And of course, it all depends on how you have the settings tuned. If you have it set to not automatically save changes, it will not save automatically when you do this. Now I should note in Windows 10, in the Snip and Sketch, you do have the option to use the print screen button to open screen snipping. And it's going to say, do you mean to open this or to switch apps? So click yes. So Windows 10 does have the functionality to do a screenshot, or to open Snip and Sketch with the print screen button. So for example, we turn that on, let's press print screen, and you can see there you are. You can see Snip and Sketch works very similar to the snipping tool in Windows 11. So let's go back to settings and turn that back off. So on Windows 11, let's say if you don't want print screen to bring up snipping tool or the Snip and Sketch functionality, a way to do is, let's say for example you go into snipping tool and you go into settings, and you'll see here the shortcut to use the print screen key to open snipping tool. You can change it into settings, and you can turn that off. So that way now, when you press print screen, it appears that nothing has happened, yet what's actually happened is the computer has taken a screenshot of your entire monitor, and you have to go into a utility like Paint and paste it in there. So there you go. Now we'll look at Paint here in a moment. So Snipping Tool in Windows 11 does offer some new functionalities. For one, you can record your screen using Snipping Tool, which is very nice. And the way this works is you click New. Well, first you have to click on Record, and then you click New. Now it's going to ask you to draw out a recording area. So we'll just do this for example. And you can make adjustments as needed. And the way this works is you can click on Start, and it will start a recording. And if you want, you can also unmute your microphone and narrate this recording. And it's very useful, I think. You get this little countdown here, and it's currently recording the section that you highlighted just a moment ago. So go ahead and stop this. Now I'm not sure why it has this pink as appearance. Could be something to do with this virtual machine, because this actually works just fine on the entire Lux. I did try it last night, and you don't get this pink appearance. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. But there you go. So I think it's pretty nice to have that functionality. Another thing that Snipping tool can do is it can scan text in a screenshot. You can see right there it is actually highlighted text, and you can copy all text. Now, for example, it's going to open up Notepad, and you can see, for example, has taken on some new features. So we're going to open up Notepad in Windows 10. Just going to close that Snipping tool in both of these. So Notepad in Windows 10 is a classic Windows program, whereas in Windows 11 it is a more or less a UWP app. The reason why I know this is because when I use OpenShell, Notepad now appears under the modern apps, same way as Paint does now. So you can see right away there's quite a little bit of difference here. So Notepad in Windows 10 is familiar. Y'all probably all know how it works. It's the same as previous versions of Windows Notepad. Now in Windows 11, we now have tabs in Notepad. So you can have multiple Notepad documents here. And check this out. When I close this out, you notice I didn't get a prompt to save. Well, that's because it actually did kind of save it in the background. So if I relaunch Notepad, it continues right where we left off. Now, if you don't like this functionality, you can in fact turn that off. And I should note that this autosave is a new feature that came as part of the recent September updates. So if you don't want Notepad to continue where you left off, you just go into Notepad where Notepad starts. And by default, it's set to open content from the previous section. We'll just change it to open a new window. There you go. And now you can see it's asking if we want to save changes. That way, when you close Notepad, a lot of times I use Notepad just for literally a temporary notepad. And sometimes I don't want to save what's in it, I just want to close it out. That way you can simply just, not save and close. So in addition to the other apps I mentioned, Paint is another app that has received quite a few updates. So in Windows 10, the Paint application is the same one that has been around since Windows 7. Of course, Windows 7 introduced a new Microsoft Paint to replace the aging one that was in Windows Vista. That was kind of a carryover from Windows XP. I really have liked the Windows 7 style Paint. It's easy to use, offers a lot of functionality, and it incorporates the ribbon interface from Office. And the good news is, if you don't like the new Paint that's in Windows 11, you can install this in Windows 11. And I do have a video up on the channel. It's called 6 Ways You Can Improve Windows 11 Usability or something like that. And I'll put a card in the upper right corner to that. That way you can go watch it. So in Windows 7, you can see how the workspace is left aligned to the upper left corner, whereas in Windows 11 it's kind of in the center of everything. In your options here, you see like you have fewer options up front, or they're just laid out differently. I think there's more or less it's laid out differently, but you can see how it takes on sort of the icon only sort of thing, and not show you text under the various actions. Like for example, in Windows 10's Paint, you can see how there's outline and fill, where over here it's just icons. I mean, I'm not too much of a fan of that, but the Paint in Windows 11 does offer a new feature. It has this remove background function. For example, we'll use Snipping tool. We'll just take a screenshot rather of the background with print screen, and we'll paste it in here. You see, I'm so used to looking for actual words like paste. But we can go up here to edit and click on paste. Alright, so let's go ahead and attempt to remove the background. So you can see how it literally just removed everything except for this sort of flower thing in the Windows 11 desktop background. I haven't really experimented with this a whole lot, but I mean, it is a pretty cool feature they have. And I think it's about time that Paint gets this functionality. So I should note, if you're a holdout like me, you prefer the Windows 10 Paint in Windows 11, the good news is you can use both. If you install the Windows 10 Paint, you can actually use both the Windows 10 Paint and the Windows 11 Paint. In fact, you can use them side by side simultaneously at the same time. So Paint, although the interface in the Windows 11 Paint is a bit clunky, I'm not a big fan of it. I do like the new features that it has, like this from the background. And again, this is another feature that came as part of the September 2023 updates. Okay, so I've opened up several things in both of these, and I want to highlight a new feature that Windows 11 has that I think is pretty cool. So, of course, in Windows 10, you can snap applications in various locations on your screen. This has been a feature that's been around since Windows 7, and of course, it's been improved upon over the years. But, of course, in Windows 10, I mean, it's still pretty basic. It does the basic functionality. So, there you go. But Windows 11, on the other hand, has vastly improved upon the snap functionality. So, you may see that the same functionality is still there. It's pretty straightforward. But in Windows 11, you may notice when you click and drag a window, you may see this little bar pop up at the top of the screen. If you mouse up there to the top, look what you can do here. I think this is really neat. It shows you all the various ways that you can group windows using the snap functionality. I mean, I like this. I much prefer this over Windows 10. And for example, in Windows 10, when you have multiple displays, it's hard to snap stuff. Like, let's say, for example, like this up here with two displays side by side. When I had Windows 10 on this machine, I found it difficult to snap stuff to the right side of the left monitor or to the left side of the right monitor, because when you went to move stuff around, it would kind of just spill over onto the other display. It wouldn't like snap. But with Windows 11, it solves that functionality. So in Windows 11, it's nice having that bar up top. And it allows you to easily snap stuff around, including on computers that have multiple displays. And of course you can do, let's do a 50-50 split between Explorer and Paint. You can of course drag the split around back and forth. And you can do that on Windows 10 as well. So you can see, there we go. Doesn't always work. You can see sometimes the windows kind of separate. So honestly, I think the snap functionality is definitely an improvement from Windows 10. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this video by restarting these two systems to showcase the difference in performance between Windows 10 and Windows 11. So how we're going to do is we're going to go and click on Start and then click on Power in Windows 10. Then we'll go over to Windows 11, do the same. We'll give Windows 11 a little bit of an advantage here of maybe a second or so. So how we're going to do is go and click Restart and then quickly go over to Windows 10 and click Restart. So you can see how Windows 10 is leading a little bit. Windows 11 actually beat Windows 10 a little bit, but sometimes Windows 10 will go a little faster than Windows 11, and as you may have heard, there is a startup sound in Windows 11, which I was talking over it. So let's go ahead and repeat the tests again. Windows 11 has a little bit of a speed advantage here because I clicked it about a second and a half or so early. So as you can hear, Windows 11 has a startup sound. Of course, Windows 10, like Windows 8, does not. If you enable the Windows startup sound in Windows 8 or Windows 10, you end up getting the Windows 7 / Windows Vista startup sound. So it's interesting how Windows 11 now has a startup sound of its own. So one more thing we're going to cover before we end this video is the lock screens on both of these. So let's go ahead and lock each of these systems. So there you go. Both of these are currently doing their default thing of showing random images off of Microsoft servers. And one thing I can't stand about Windows 10 and Windows 11 is how by default they treat your lock screen kind of like a billboard, let's say. They act like a billboard with all these tips and tricks. It's like, come on, why can't we just leave it a lock screen, for crying out loud? Now, Windows 10, you can see the time and the date is in the lower left corner, like Windows 8. Except Windows 10, they made it a little smaller. Windows 11, you can see it's kind of in the center. And also I should mention that Windows 11 has a new set of system fonts. Now, of course, Seago UI is still there. You can still find it in Paint, but for example, the font you see on system elements like the Taskbar and stuff like that, you may notice is a little different. You can see how this is the new Seago UI that came out with Windows 8. It's a slightly modified version of the Seago UI that was in Windows Vista and Windows 7. Windows 11 is a little different. So, takes on a little bit new look. So there you have it. So let's go ahead and sign back into these. So the lock screens are very similar on both of these. So anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Of course, I didn't cover every single little thing different about these two operating systems, but I did touch on quite a few things, and hopefully is enough for you to maybe make an informed decision on whether you want to use Windows 10 or Windows 11. Now, of course, you have to keep in mind that Windows 10 support, as of right now, will be ending near the end of 2025, whereas Windows 11 support will go on for many years after that. Now, the thing about Windows 10 is it's currently still the more popular choice of these two for two different reasons. Number one, like, for example, Windows 7 or like Windows XP, Windows 10 was sort of that operating system that fixed a lot of issues of its predecessor, and many people just like how it simply works. It's familiar, it's been around for a while, and people don't want to get rid of it. And I totally understand that. Windows 10 is still a good choice. But again, as I mentioned, we have to keep in mind that support for it will be ending in a little less than 2 years from now. Now, Windows 11, of course, has a lot of new features, some good, some not so good, and that's one of the reasons why people may not want to switch to Windows 11, and I totally understand that. Now, the second reason will be what I call on this channel the Microsoft Elite Class minimum system requirements on Windows 11. Windows 11, when it was released, it came out with some ridiculous minimum system requirements. And the reason why I call them Elite Class system requirements is because Microsoft, when they come out with these requirements, they basically cut off access to computers that were then at the time not even 4 years old in some cases. Computers that you would buy in 2018 or build in 2018, depending on what CPU you have, if it's not at least an 8th gen Intel Core series or newer, or AMD Zen Plus or newer, you were left out in the cold. You could not upgrade to Windows 11 unless you use a workaround such as Rufus. But the big issue I have with those minimum system requirements is they're preventing a lot of good computers out there from being able to run the latest Windows, And this is hardware that at the end of 2025 will either run unsupported on Windows 10 or get thrown in the trash. Now, of course, there is the option to install Linux on these computers, and that's definitely a good option. Linux is a great alternative to Windows, but it's, for several reasons, Linux still has not quite gotten to that point where Microsoft is really even worried. So, the thing is, when Windows is still the common operating system that is supported by various like software vendors and companies and just you name it, it's a big issue that Microsoft is more or less in the works of creating an e-waste nightmare in later 2025 when these computers are running Windows 10, which could be over 1 billion PCs even in the end of 2025. That's an issue. That's a serious issue, and it's the second reason that people are not upgrading to Windows 11 is because their computers do not meet the elite class system requirements. And it's like Microsoft, when they came out with Windows 11, it's like they reserved it for the elite class of PCs. You could have a Threadripper PC that you built in 2018 that has 32 gigs of RAM and this has gobs of performance, could easily run Windows 11 very well, but because it's not on that supported CPU list, doesn't meet the elite class system requirements that the $200 piece of crap laptop at Walmart right now could run Windows 11. Now, that's a number I just come up with. The thing is, though, there are cheap laptops out there that have Celeron system on chip. Their performance is just terrible. Way slower than many computers that don't meet the elite class system requirements, but yet they can run Windows 11, yet computers out there that, as I mentioned, that cost thousands of dollars to build back in 2018, 3 or 4 years later, back in 2021, did not meet the elite class Windows system requirements. So that's the second issue that is causing lack of upgrading from Windows 10 to Windows 11. So I figured I would mention those two big reasons to wrap up this video. So anyways, that is a comparison between Windows 10 and Windows 11 side by side. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Hey everybody. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video from Cuckoo Channel. If this is your first time, please subscribe to the channel and be sure to tick the bell so we get notified of new video posts. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, leave a comment, and share this video as well as the channel with your friends and get the word out. Also, I have a second channel, that's CubeCompMTDX. Over there you'll find videos about thunderstorms and weather, cycling, and videos about me personally. Feel free to subscribe over there as well if you like. Again, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for your support.